There
Good afternoon and welcome to the FEMA Region 2 Individual and Community Preparedness webinar series. My name is Allison Albright and I'm the Regional Preparedness Liaison for FEMA Region 2. I'm going to provide a few technical considerations before we begin. Today's proceedings are being recorded and captioned. The archived event will be available on the FEMA website in the coming days. You should hear audio through your computer speakers, so please ensure your volume is turned up so you may hear the proceedings accordingly. In the top right corner, we ask if you'd like to receive news and updates from Region 2, and if so, please enter your email address and we'll be sure to add you to the distribution list. We will have a question and answer session after the presentation concludes. You'll see a Q&A pod in the lower right-hand corner. Please feel free to submit your questions about the subject matter there, and time permitting, we'll do our best to answer them. Finally, the PowerPoint presentation from today will be available for you to download in the file share pod as a PDF. You can click on the file and download it using the download button. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the Region 2 Community Preparedness Officer to introduce our speaker and today's proceedings.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Debbie Costa, the Community Preparedness Officer for FEMA Region 2. On behalf of our team working to strengthen preparedness across New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, I'm so happy to welcome you to our Preparedness and Resilience webinar series. FEMA's Goal 1 is to build a culture of preparedness. As part of that goal, we're pleased to be hosting this Lunch and Learn series for National Preparedness Month. Today's webinar will focus on FEMA's role in response to a natural hazard or other emergency. Response Liaison Rob Hutchinson, New Jersey FEMA Integration Team, will discuss key aspects to consider when coordinating an emergency response, including situational awareness, incident management, evacuation and sheltering, and search and rescue. He will also cover other response division functions such as operational planning and logistics. Rob Hutchinson is the Response Operations Liaison for the New Jersey FEMA Integration Team. He has 20 years of federal emergency management experience and has been with FEMA for the last 15 years. He worked as a plan and section chief on the FEMA National Incident Management Assistance Team prior to joining Region 2 in October of 2018. Rob, I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. As Debbie said, I am on the New Jersey FEMA Integration Team, and in that role, I work right alongside the state employees. So today, we're going to go over FEMA's role in the response to either a natural or a man-made disaster. Basically, a review of FEMA's role in response within Region 2 and around the nation. We're going to cover the functions that the Response Division covers before, during, and after an incident that would occur. So FEMA's authorities come from the Stafford Act, which the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act was passed by Congress in 1998. It was an act that amended the original or the 1974 Disaster Relief Act. And basically that all the statutory authority for FEMA's disaster response activities and our FEMA programs come from the Stafford Act. So we have three major programs in FEMA, and those programs are individual assistance, which is how we help individuals, families, and households recover from a disaster. Public assistance, which is a reimbursement program that provides federal funding for communities to respond from disasters. And hazard mitigation, which is basically a grant program to provide federal funding for state, local, tribal, or territorial governments so that they can rebuild in a way that reduces losses from future disasters to their community. And there are different parts of hazard mitigation funding, but there's special funding that's available after a presidential disaster. So when an incident occurs in your state, the number one thing we stress is that all disasters are managed locally. We work at a state-managed response that is supported by the federal government. And FEMA's role is to be a coordinating agency. We bring in many other federal agencies and other non-governmental agencies, such as the American Red Cross, to assist us in the response. Those other federal agencies, we call them emergency support functions, or ESFs. We bring them in during a disaster. So a state may have a disaster or may have an incident that doesn't rise to a federal disaster. If a state has an incident, the governor must request a disaster declaration under the Stafford Act to the president, and that's when FEMA would get involved in their disaster. So we would come in and assist with coordinating the federal response and provide assistance to the state. Before a disaster occurs, we have several elements in the response division that assist us in knowing what's going on. We call that situational awareness. We have a watch team that assists in gathering information from our states. And our FEMA Region 2 watch and the other watches around the country are responsible for collecting that information from the states, analyzing it and sharing it throughout FEMA and to the other federal agencies. Those watch centers maintain uninterrupted 24-hour awareness of our Region 2 states, New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, monitor whether they're ready to respond, how ready they are to events, and make sure that we are ready to respond with that coordinated federal disaster response. They do this by providing us with various presentations and reports throughout the day. And that awareness is shared multiple times during the day. They are also our link to our Regional Response Coordination Center, or RRCC. You can see in the picture there on the left our Regional Response Coordination Center. And each of the 10 FEMA regions maintains a RRCC. And these are coordination centers that have the ability to expand and become an interagency facility staffed by, again, those emergency support functions and FEMA staff in anticipation or during some of the more serious incidents within the FEMA region. And we bring in those 8 personnel agencies to make sure that we can support our states in their response and also support the federal response during the disaster. Again, in that coordination role, we're making sure that we're supporting the states as they respond to their disaster and giving them the assistance that they need. So how does FEMA do this? We have the Incident Command system under the National Incident Management System, or NIMS. Our on-the-ground personnel are in our IMAT, or Incident Management Assistance Team program. And these are regional-based. We have teams in Region 3 that are basically response teams that go out into the state, and they're designed to improve that coordination and response when we have these serious incidents, events, disasters, or even before an incident occurs, they can be pre-staged. These IMATs are designed to rapidly deploy to the state and be that initial point of contact between the FEMA region and our state partners. Usually they'll go directly to the State Emergency Operations Center and support the state government, the State Emergency Management Agency, or Office of Emergency Management, and the local and county governments in their efforts to prepare immediately prior to a disaster, to save lives, protect property, and then provide those life-sustaining services immediately after a disaster. Basically, we need to meet individual needs for shelter, food, and water, and then restore the critical infrastructure in a community, whether that's getting the power back on through emergency generators, whether it's making sure that we're distributing water because maybe the utilities are knocked out. But that incident management team, again, using those emergency support function partners in the field, will work to get those services restored. So they work in a system called the incident management system, and they use the incident command. And this is just a common, comprehensive system. So we have a nationwide approach to managing incidents. It allows us to be standardized with our state and federal partners. And the leads in state and federal, we have a federal coordinating officer who is our basically the highest and most visible leader in the federal response and responsible for all of our actions. And they report up through FEMA to FEMA headquarters on all of the expenses and response availability and our actions. And then their counterpart, the state coordinating officer, oversees all aspects of the state response in their activities during a disaster. So some of the common things you see during a disaster: evacuation and sheltering. FEMA's role in this is coordination. We also do funding of sheltering. Our partner commonly is the American Red Cross. Will run shelters in various states. We run a system called the National Shelter System that's basically a coordinated database of potential shelter resources, potential shelter locations. But again, we work directly in a partnership with the American Red Cross to ensure that we're supporting states when they need to have sheltering activities, when they need to move their residents or disaster survivors into large sheltering. We also make sure that we are able to support their evacuation needs through various national contracts and various use of our national assets to move people out of harm's way, hopefully prior to the impact of a disaster, and get them out of areas where you may see storm surge or flooding before a disaster occurs. Another system that FEMA has where we play a large coordination role is search and rescue. And we have a large component of the urban search and rescue, or USAR teams. There are 28 teams across the country. A large number of them are in California, but in Region 2, there's a team in New Jersey that is sponsored by the New Jersey State Police. But they are interagency. Most of the teams are interagency. They have a lot of different capabilities, and they respond to things like building collapses, flooding. They rescue people from all kinds of incidents, and they have capabilities to do search and rescue in building collapses. They can provide a reconnaissance to assess damage. They can do medical aid. They bring with them not only emergency medical technicians, but physicians. They also bring search and rescue canines, dogs, who can assist in search. They bring a hazardous materials capability, and they also can do things like secure utilities, secure homes, and operate in many different hazards. They have the ability to stabilize after, say, an earthquake structures. So we have, as I said, 28 teams spread across the country. These teams come from local fire departments, police departments, and other responders, and they can deploy anywhere within the country in a very short period of time. They are able to deploy 70 individuals within 6 hours.